Is the Justice Grinch about to steal Mark Meadows' Christmas? The breakdown starts now. Good evening and welcome to The Breakdown. I'm Tara Setmayer and this is the Rick Wilson. And tonight we have lots to talk about because, well, it's a slow news week, right? It's supposed to be the holidays. There's nothing going on. There's a lot going on, including Congress right now, the House of Representatives about to vote Mark Meadows as in contempt of Congress and criminally refer him to the DOJ. So that is happening now as we speak. Later on in the show, we're hoping to have friend of the show, Harry Litman, join us if we can get him. We're having a little technical difficulties, but the plan is Harry will join us shortly, so stay tuned for him. But Rick, before we get started tonight, since we were last together, this awful tragedy out in the Midwest with these tornadoes and the loss of life and just the destruction is just heartbreaking. And I want to extend my heart and prayers and condolences to the folks who've lost their lives, their families, they've lost their livelihoods. It's just really, really tragic. And here at the Lincoln Project, we've been getting a lot of questions about what can we do? How can we help people? So we have a link on our website to various local organizations that are helping the victims of the tornadoes from Kentucky to Tennessee to Illinois to Arkansas. It ripped through multiple states. So you can go to our website. There's a one-stop shop there that has different links to national organizations and local on-the-ground organizations by state. So if you are feeling generous, please help those who are in need this Christmas holiday. Man, that is tough, Rick.
It is truly something, Tara, and I think, as we posted up on the website, there's a set of links to help folks in those areas. And this was one of the longest running tornadoes on the ground in record, and it swept through a bunch of vulnerable communities in Kentucky. My daughter and her husband were in Nashville when the alarm started going off. They had no damage, of course, but massive winds and a lot of the sort of fear that these things come up so quickly. I mean, I'm a Florida guy. I'm spoiled. We have days and days and days and days before a hurricane comes. You can mentally get yourself in gear. You can prepare yourself. You can get the hell out. Tornadoes are a much different thing, and they're much more frightening in my mind. They're so fast and they're so deadly. And I just wish the people of Kentucky, Arkansas, Illinois, and Tennessee, and elsewhere, the swift recovery on this. It is a tragedy right around the holidays, especially in Kentucky. And I think if anybody's watching in our audience tonight who feels motivated, we'd encourage you to go and donate to the relief efforts there.
Absolutely. And as a personal note, I prefer the local organizations who are on the ground versus some people like the Red Cross and the larger organizations, and that's fine. But there's a lot of bureaucracy there sometimes, and the people need the help now. And the local organizations are plugged in on the ground. They know where the needs are immediately, and they tend to be less bureaucratic. So that's just, as someone who helped run a faith-based homeless program with my mom down in South Florida, and we've done many hurricane evacuations and sheltering in place and things like that when storms have come through. I can just tell you that the local on-the-ground organizations are always the ones that know what's needed and are able to get it faster. So that's just
I want to track down the guy that brought the barbecue rig to Mayfield. That is America right there.
There you go. Or the guy who was playing piano in his house. Did you see that?
Yep.
Everything was, his roof was gone and everything, but his piano stayed intact and he was there playing piano. It was it chokes me up now. I'm thinking about that, but the American spirit is strong. Speaking of the American spirit being strong, some news last night during Mark Meadows, the committee hearing, the January 6th committee convened to vote it out of committee, this criminal referral. And we found out some things. We found out through text messages that Meadows himself turned over, which is the irony in all of this. He's refusing to cooperate now, but yet he turned over a bunch of stuff already. It's bizarre. We'll talk to Harry about kind of the why that is in a minute. But Liz Cheney read some very interesting texts last night that every single major news outlet played, except for one. I wonder why. Let's listen to it.
According to the records, multiple Fox News hosts knew the president needed to act immediately. They texted Mr. Meadows, and he has turned over those texts. Quote, Mark, the president needs to tell people in the Capitol to go home. This is hurting all of us. He is destroying his legacy, Laura Ingraham wrote. Please get him on TV. Destroying everything you have accomplished, Brian Kilmeade texted. Quote, can he make a statement? Ask people to leave the Capitol, Sean Hannity urged. As the violence continued, one of the president's sons texted Mr. Meadows, quote, he's got to condemn this shit ASAP. The Capitol Police tweet is not enough, Donald Trump Jr. texted. Meadows responded, quote, I'm pushing it hard, I agree. Still, President Trump did not immediately act. Donald Trump Jr. texted again and again, urging action by the president. Quote, we need an Oval Office address. He has to lead now. It has gone too far and gotten out of hand, end quote. But hours passed without necessary action by the president. These non-privileged texts
are some familiar names there, Rick Wilson.
You know, this is one of the things I tweeted about this a little bit last night, Tara.
I did too.
I know you did. We were both on it a little bit.
On fire about
this.
Yes.
This is the bullshit of Fox News.
Mm-hmm.
This is the bullshit of all these people. And for the MAGA folks watching this, and probably not a whole ton of MAGA folks watching this, there are always a few. This is the way that they treat you. You've been conditioned by Fox and by Breitbart and all these other outlets to believe that the left looks down on you and the elites look down on you and the smart people look down on you. Well, you know what? You know who really looks down on you? That fucking clown show mutant parade at Fox. Rupert Murdoch plays you people like suckers. He plays you like a fiddle. And all of those people that you think are the hardcore MAGA true believer Donald Trump super fans, they're doing it because they get paid to do it.
That's right.
Sean Hannity doesn't believe in any of this crap. He knew how bad it looked. Laura Ingraham knew how bad it looked. They all knew how bad it was. And I guarantee you, they will never cover this on their air. They will never speak about it. What did they cover that night? Laura Ingraham claimed there were infiltrators and Antifa among them.
Right. Knowing good and hell damn well that was a fucking lie.
They knew exactly what they were doing.
They knew it. Because if they were worried it was Antifa, then why the hell were they texting Mark Meadows? He's not the chief of staff of Antifa.
And, you know, and it took you know, a long time for Chris Wallace to have had enough, one of the few straight-er journalists there. It took almost a year for Jonah Goldberg and Steve Hayes to quit as contributors. And there are still a lot of people at Fox who go on their air every day and pretend that what they're doing is normal and pretend that they didn't know that Trump could have stopped this thing, that Trump motivated it, that Trump's allies and friends planned it, that the attack was going to happen. They knew it. You know who else knew it, Tara? A whole bunch of congressmen knew it. They were writing. And I can tell you one thing. They didn't name those names last night. But Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney and the rest of that committee, they know who those people are. And those members of Congress know who they are too. And I'm going to guess when we see it at the end of the day, it will include people like Mark Meadows. It will include people like Matt Gaetz. It will include people like Jim Jordan, all these people who play the role on TV of the giant MAGA asshole. but they knew what was happening. They knew it was wrong. They knew it was an affront to the Constitution. They knew it was an attempt to overthrow an election. They knew what they were doing, and they were screaming for help.
And they were scared for their own
Yes,
lives. That's,
because
I
they're
think, what
afraid. They're as afraid of the mob as
right.
anyone else is.
And the mob would have dragged them out too,
Sure.
because they were in such fits of rage that they didn't really give a shit who it was. They didn't know one
Let
from
me tell
the
you,
other.
if they had found Marco Rubio, they would have dragged him out and killed him. If they had found Mitt Romney, they would have dragged him out and killed him. If they had found any Democratic member that they recognized, they would have dragged them out and killed them. That is what mobs do. And people who say, "Oh, that could have never happened. That was they're just tourists." This is a alternate history. This is an alternate universe where they believe that they can just bullshit this away. They can't.
No, and this is the thing, and we've been very tough on the January 6th committee.
Yeah.
You've been a little tougher than even me, and you caught a lot of crap for it. But you were proven right, because sometimes they need that kick in the behind to realize that we cannot play this like every other blue ribbon commission that happens in Washington, just a pro forma thing. No, this is really, really serious. And not saying that the people on the committee aren't serious people, they are. And it looks as though they have stepped this up considerably, because
I think so.
they've amped this up. And I want to applaud them for what they're doing now. Because I think now the American people are starting to see the severity in which this whole thing happened. We're hearing terms like coup attempt because we saw now there's that PowerPoint presentation that we now know exists, where they literally put the coup attempt in a PowerPoint presentation. Here's how you do it, folks. I mean, this is insane. This was not some spontaneous, let's just go up there and decide to kick in some windows at the Capitol.
Right.
There may have been some of that, but this was a pre-planned thing that Meadows was very privy to, and he is in a lot of trouble. You also had this former army colonel or something or other who was behind the idea that the National Guard could be on the ready to protect the MAGA supporters, because I think they thought Antifa was going to show up and they were ready to have a battle like we saw last summer during the George Floyd protests. They thought something like that was going to happen again, and that didn't materialize, thankfully. But the point is that there was a lot of planning and anticipating and really treasonous stuff, in my opinion. Treasonous that was going on that day. And the president of the United States was right smack in the middle of it, standing by, proudly watching what was going on, while all of his minions were running around trying to effectuate a coup.
You know, one of the things I think
on his behalf,
the most telling about what a scuzzy kind of low-rent mobster this guy is he doesn't use a phone, he doesn't text, he doesn't talk to people about anything official. So even his own children are trying to get to him. Even Don Jr., who pretends to be this super red-pilled, you know, whatever, is texting like, "Oh my God, he has to stop this shit. Mark, make him stop." And I gotta say, there's nothing that should surprise Americans at this point as the committee continues to peel back the layers here, because you are going to find that Steve Bannon and Roger Stone and Alex Jones and Ollie Alexander and all this entire breakfast of weirdos were involved in a criminal conspiracy.
Yes.
They were involved in something they knew was going to end up in a situation where you had people who were told by the president, "You have to march down there or you won't have a country left." They were told by the president's lawyer, "You have to have trial by combat." They were told by Mo Brooks, one of the president's closest allies, that they had to march on the Capitol
and go kick some ass.
And we saw today in one of the sentencing memos, or one of the sentencing hearings, for one of the folks that showed up late in the day on the 6th.
Is this the one that threatened Pelosi?
Yes, who said he was going to go and go put a bullet in Pelosi. And it wasn't metaphorical. He was armed. He was armed up. He had a Tavor. He had, which is a bullpup style, Israeli built carbine. He had a Glock. He was ready to go in. He had 2,500 rounds of ammunition. That's a pretty big fucking gunfight, by the way.
No shit.
But this is a guy who was texting with someone contemporaneously, and someone said Trump doesn't want this, and he said, "Fuck that! Trump wants us to take scalps or to take heads."
Mhm.
And these people believe they were on a military or quasi-military mission to seize the Capitol. Now,
as
thankfully,
directed by their dear leader,
right.
which is the crux of all of this. They didn't get this
Thankfully
out of
for
nowhere.
America, a lot of them were fucking morons.
Right.
Thankfully for America, a lot of them were disorganized. Thankfully, the proportion of people who were retired military or retired law enforcement, a la the 3 percenters and some of the Proud Boys, was de minimis.
Thank God. But that,
And-
as you always say, though, that if there's no consequences, this was just a practice run.
Right.
And we have Harry Litman, so let's bring him
Oh,
in.
fantastic.
And Harry is our hero tonight because he's doing this on the fly for us because he loves us here at the Breakdown, and we love you back. Harry, welcome.
You are the man. Well, Harry, from a legal
you don't want to see where I am, but thank you.
we're gonna
Yeah.
leave it off the record.
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
So, Harry, from a legal perspective, how do you see the last sort of 24 hours of the 1-6 committee? How has this starting to change the ball game here?
Man, it has really torqued up now, because I think everyone's been assuming, certainly I have, that there'd be no appetite in the DOJ to bring any kind of criminal charges against Trump. But now you see the committee and Cheney. Basically, this is why how they're justifying pushing on Meadows, that she's invoked possible criminal charges against him for basically inciting an insurrection and impeding Congress 2-3 times. So think about it. It's one thing if the DOJ is left to its own devices, but if the Congress were to recommend make a criminal referral against Donald Trump for impeding Congress, DOJ can't just ignore that. They've got to really, play that to the end, and that could force Merrick Garland's hand in a way that wasn't going to happen before. So all of a sudden, and one other thing in the last 24 hours is they're one half step away from the ultimate conflagration of subpoenaing other members of Congress, who we already know what they've said. We just don't know who they are, but we'll know soon enough. So oh man, Cheney in particular has really up the temperature to 200 degrees and going north.
To your point about the other members of Congress, which is the other aspect of this that's been pretty big news. We were waiting for you to come so we could talk about this part. A lot of people, and we've been saying this from the beginning, we knew that there were members of Congress who were involved in this in a really material way, but it didn't really come up with the same level of evidence, I'm going to use that loosely, that we have now. Clearly, the committee has receipts that they didn't have during the
Terry, you left
hearing.
me for a second, but let me jump in anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
we might have thought that was a third rail. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was saying that it looks like the committee has receipts now that they didn't have during the impeachment hearing back, earlier this year. That really points to members of Congress. Like, I think they may have their phone records and things like that. But it was clear. Adam Schiff, we have the clip, but I'm not going to play it. Adam Schiff read off some of these text messages from members of Congress. One in particular stood out that said, "I'm so sorry that we were unsuccessful yesterday." And they didn't mention their names. Is that because they think that there could be more criminal or more substantive action later, and they don't want to blow it up now with who it is?
I just think it's sort of an interim effect. They are really close to the third rail, and nothing prevents it exactly, except I think it would be considered the total, sort of ultimate in hardball brushback. So they're holding back, but of course everyone knows in Congress who it is, and Congress leaking the way it does. I think we'll all know pretty soon.
Sure.
So then I think it's tactical, but it's another way of just turning up the fire.
I think that's right. I think there's a degree to which I think the Democrats and the Republicans on the committee in the form of Cheney and Kinzinger are finally starting to appreciate there's a little bit of spectacle, a little bit of courtroom drama here now in this that wasn't there before. There's a little bit more of a show that's attracting the attention of people that I think was necessary all along, because otherwise this was going to disappear into like a sort of bland congressional process thing. Now it is getting a little sportier,
A little spicier now.
yes,
No kidding.
Harry,
And of course,
go ahead, Harry.
we're going to have live hearings and Klieg lights and people showing up. I think it's right. They were thinking, are we really hitting home to the American public? And we have to. And yep, I think they're, really in Act 4 now.
And also, I
Delicious.
think they were a little slow in the beginning because they didn't know what they were going to get. Now we know that they've had over 200 people come in and testify and provide documents. Today, Keith Kellogg, who was Vice President Pence's national security advisor, who was actually there with Trump while this was going on, he's the first person to testify in front of the committee that was actually there. So I don't think that Keith Kellogg has any motivation to protect Donald Trump, given that Trump sat back while a mob was trying to murder the vice president by hanging. So I think that is also going to be really, really informative for the committee, with someone that finally has a firsthand account that we haven't heard yet.
Yeah, I think one of those things.
Right. I mean, that was a real breakthrough, and you have him there with the tweet saying, after Trump says Pence is fine, and you have him terrified. But also, you make a really good point, Tara, because they've spent time really methodically laying groundwork with 250 witnesses behind the scenes. So now they're like prepared prosecutors who can really ask questions confidently, knowing where it's going. And again, where it's going to them is right up to Donald Trump. That wasn't clear, I think, before 36 hours ago. Now it is.
And I think this obviously looks, to me at least from the outside, like they have finally gotten together and gotten the phone records, gotten the text messages, gotten the email chains, and built a sort of analytical picture of what was going on that day. And at this point, if I were one of the people resisting the subpoenas from the committee now, I would be really wondering, they're serious about this, and I think some of the lower level people are like, they'll send Bannon up. He won't mind. It'll be whatever. It'll be a show. But Meadows is not a guy who's going to prosper in this environment. He doesn't have the money to defend himself. He can't raise the money to defend himself.
That's right.
And the lower tier fish now, I think they've thrown some dynamite in the pond, and all the lower tier fish are going to go, yeah, this is not as pretty as I thought. I'm not going to have as much fun here.
Yeah. But the thing about Meadows is he really, say it again.
That's what I was going to ask you about Meadows.
I just want to say about
actual
Meadows.
Exposure is.
Yeah. So, I think they're playing it really smart. It had been looking like he was going to say executive privilege. And even though the courts are going against him, it's not final yet. But now Cheney's been really smart. They've said, this is not the privilege stuff, and you have to show up and answer the questions that you say aren't privileged. And that's why he's going to look in contempt. But let me just say, Tara, they need his testimony in a way they didn't Bannon, and he really doesn't want to go forward. I know it looks like a freight train that's just too late to put the brakes on, but I still think you may see some last minute maneuvers because it's in both their interests to try to do something. But Meadows now, they're setting it up as best they can for the criminal case, for the criminal case, by saying nothing to do with privilege here. I know your lawyer is saying it's, but you yourself are saying that this stuff that we want to talk to you about, these Trump messages, these things with Congress, they're not privileged, and they're not. So that's the strongest case for a criminal contempt, even though he wants to talk about privilege.
So I think he also publishing a book with half of the stuff in it. Was like,
that can hurt. There are some mild waiver issues here. Yeah.
And the other thing
Sorry,
too,
Tara,
that no, it's okay. The other thing too about this, that we're talking about executive privilege and it's being thrown around a lot. He has no claim to executive privilege when they're out of office. Besides that, I mean, they're still saying that it could be litigated, but haven't courts already decided that only the current president of the United States determines what constitutes executive privilege? Just to be clear.
It's a great point, but they're really on the 10-yard line on it, because the court has held it, but it hasn't gone completely final. You're talking about a criminal referral where he's saying, I still have in good faith. So they've decided, and I think wisely, let's not go on that ground, because he can say until it's final, I have to listen to Trump. And so, has the Supreme Court hasn't ruled. So they're purposely skipping by that and going to the stuff they say isn't privileged. And that's some pretty incendiary stuff involving Trump and the members.
The other thing too about this is we've been hearing about this 14th Amendment, Section 3, and with the members of Congress and with Trump even too. Can you explain a little bit about why that's relevant now? The 14th Amendment, Section 3, part of it was about not being able to run for office again if you were involved in an insurrection. It happened after the Civil War to make sure that they didn't have any traitors in the midst. But can you explain why that's relevant now?
Man, you're good. So go to the head of the class. People are not focused on this, and they ought to be. There is a provision that says if Congress finds that somebody was disloyal, they can't expel them for that, but that's a qualification. Same as being 35 years old for a president is a qualification. So if somebody is found to have actually fomented an insurrection, that person is not eligible. So it comes to the next, and there's cases in history here. So it comes to the next round, and somebody just brings an action in the home district of Gosard or whoever, and says, look, you lose under 14.3, and the court would have to decide it. But they would say if he actually did this action, he is not qualified, same as if he were 34 years old and running to be president.
That would be good.
That's
Wouldn't
delicious.
That be glorious? Yeah.
Right. You came right into my con law strike zone. Thank you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, because we talked about this over the summer when this was first starting to come up, and it's been bubbling up again. Yeah. And I was like, well, we've got a legal expert here. Let's get him to explain it a little bit better than I do. So
there was a guy. Congress voted it, and he wasn't qualified. Literally doesn't have constitutional qualifications if the Congress finds that he in fact was a traitor.
I expect we're going to have a lot of people debating the fine legal definition of the word foment in the coming months.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Well, Harry,
no, it's stronger than that. Hey, Rick, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, Harry, we appreciate
I didn't know you were going to hit me with that. It's a pretty strong claim, this 14.3. Yeah.
But it's the first time.
All right.
We've
so I'm sorry
for this in 100 years,
staccato, et cetera, but I hope I still.
Yeah. No. We're grateful you made it for us.
Well, Harry, thank you so much for posting up tonight. We really appreciate you as always, sir. You are the best. We will talk to you again soon. Have a fantastic holiday.
All right.
We'll see you in the new year, my friend.
I love that guy.
Me too. He's the best. And we apologize for the technical difficulties, but we thought it was important for Harry to come on. Let me tell you something, guys.
He scrambled. He made that shit work.
He did. He's on his way to an appointment, and it was like, wait, hold on. I'm going to do it from my phone. Let me get it. So thank you, Harry Litman. We appreciate you. Before we go tonight, just a couple other quick things. So Fox News is continuing to deny what was going on. They're just acting like it never happened. It's very 1984. Like we're just going to.
Are they focused on the war on Christmas trees or something tonight?
Yeah, that and do you know one of the chyrons that was on last night while all this was going on was actually Joe Biden talks climate change, blames climate change for tornado deaths, like exploits tornado deaths with climate. I was like, really? I mean, they are really stretching. It's just, but the problem is you have so many people in this country who watch this and are influenced by it. Yep. And I saw a study today that was very alarming to me coming out of Cornell University that said we are on, did you see this? That we were on the precipice of political divides that are irreparable.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed in this country. That we're not quite there yet, but we're almost there, like a nuclear reactor. Like once the nuclear reactor starts to melt down, you can't do anything about it.
Right.
But beforehand, there's things you can do to try to cool it off. We are like right at that point where some things are political divides in this country are not reversible. And that is really bad for democracy. And Fox News, OANN, and this whole right-wing ecosystem, they are the fuel behind this oftentimes. And it's we have to continue to combat it. And shows like ours and others who speak the truth about it, we're trying to do our part here because, we're in some scary times here. But anyhow, before we go, we have our last week in the Republican Party, which we didn't get a chance to show at the top of the hour. So we want to show it because we showed exclusively on the show and remind people of all of the kookery going on in the Republican Party. Roll it.
Hiya.
Sad news, our very own beautiful 50-foot Fox News Christmas tree was destroyed. Why is burning Christmas trees not a hate crime?
America's crime crisis hits close to home for us here at Fox.
The DOJ can tell you precisely how many Qurans were burned last year in the United States, but they don't keep track of Christmas trees.
The mini Trump drones, for kids are going to really appreciate it.
So you guys do know we won in 2016. You know we won in 2020, right? And you know we're going to win again in 2024, right?
A picture says 1,000 words, Janine. It's the old saying. And you can see the accomplishment. You can see America first.
Donald Trump is the most consequential Republican in the entire Republican Party, maybe in the history of the parties. And if you're going to lead this party in the House and the Senate, you have to have a working relationship with Donald Trump.
In Joe Biden's America, drug dealers, it is legal. You can sell booze to kids. You can sell drugs to kids. You can sell stolen televisions to kids.
The notion that Republicans are going to take control of the House and we're going to hold hands in the warm spring rain with the Democrats and legislate is ludicrous.
I've got 7 siblings that are Marxist. And when they start squealing and crying, I know I'm over the bombing sites. To stay there and keep on going.
On January 3rd of 2023, when the Republicans take over the majority in the House again, I'll make sure that we get Newsmax on the House internal cable system on day one.
The virus itself, this is true, does tend to take away the life force in some people, I notice. I mean, it does feminize people.
All I want for Christmas is freedom for the whole wide world and you and me. I don't care if they paint the White House black. All I want for Christmas is my president back.
Good Lord. First of all, Eric Trump needs to get some pants that fit him. And Don Jr., no matter what you do, your daddy still doesn't love you. I mean, these people are out of control. Yeah.
That's a Chiron, folks.
Yes.
Right there.
Yes.
That's Chiron.
While we were watching that, one of my closest political friends just sent me a text. He said, considering the dangers associated with a Trump presidency versus Trump's election conspiracies, which is the more frightening prospect, Trump winning in 2024 or losing in 2024? I thought that was very interesting, given the way that people reacted. Like, are we going to have another armed insurrection in this country? God forbid he runs and then he loses. What happens then? We saw what happened in 2020.
Well, this is why we should be very cautious about this normalization of political violence. We should be very cautious about the presence of these quasi, these paramilitary style groups like the Proud Boys, the 3%ers, the Oath Keepers, etc., who have not, by the way, gone away and disappeared.
No, they're
the Proud Boys are showing up at school board meetings now to intimidate people.
And they're recruiting more.
Right. And
they're recruiting.
So we should be very cautious about that because eventually someone like Bannon will say, we should have a direct action arm of the America First movement.
They have already, Rick.
Yeah, listen.
Didn't he say something about this? Him and Matt Gaetz. They're talking about.
They were talking about a political strike team to take over the government, but they will inevitably slip further down into, well, if those people are really going to fight us, they're traitors, therefore traitors deserve to die. And you know, what could happen? It could be an accident. They're going to do that. They will eventually slide down that particular slippery slope. And the danger of the 1-6 committee and other law enforcement bodies not taking steps to push back against these people and to penalize them and to incarcerate the ones who are found guilty in a court of law for a reasonably meaningful and punitive degree of time. Because let me tell you something. You find a kid in Baltimore who has 1.01 ounces of weed on him, and he's going to go to jail for 20 fucking years.
Yep.
You have a guy who says he's going to kill Nancy Pelosi, and he gets 28 months. Get the fuck out of here. So this is, you know, as I've said 100 times, if a coup attempt is not punished, it is nothing but a training exercise. We got to be careful. We got to be cautious. We got to hope the committee continues to keep the cadence up and that the DOJ does the same.
I think they will. And you're 100% right. And I want to say, give a shout out to, speaking of law enforcement and people who are heroic on the other side of this. They were at the CNN Heroes ceremony over the weekend. I don't know if people watch that. You know, I spent many years with CNN as a contributor, and the CNN Heroes program is one of the hallmarks of their programming.
Really
I mean, it just, there's never a dry eye in the room. These people are amazing, amazing people that they spotlight, and the good works that they do. And the 4 police officers who testified, Dunn, Fanone, Gosnell, and the other one's name is escaping me right now. They were all there. And, you know, they are continuing. 2 of them were in the hearing room yesterday watching what's going on. Let's not forget what those officers sacrificed and what their fellow brethren sacrificed that day and what they went through and who's talking about them and who is standing up for them. And that's also why the committee's work is so important, because we need to honor. You talk about Blue Lives Matter, you talk about your law and order, then if you support police officers, then you should be supporting what the January 6th committee is doing and supporting what's happening in the courts to make sure that those bastards that attack those officers see some jail time, because that's absolutely where they deserve to be. It would never be tolerated if any of those people were Black, brown, or Muslim. Let's just be honest about that.
Yep.
Lastly, speaking of another hero, Time has named their man of the year, Rick. And it's not exactly who I thought it should have been. It's Elon Musk, but to hell with that. I mean, that's great with SpaceX and what they're doing. That's cool. But the man of the year should have been Officer Eugene Goodman. There's this meme going around where people said, show that there it is right there. Now, that's someone who deserves to be man of the year because he saved lives that day.
He almost single-handedly prevented the downfall of our government.
That's right.
Because he led them away from Romney and a whole bunch of other members of the Senate who would have been killed.
Mm-hmm.
They would have been killed. The mob would have killed them.
Yep.
And nobody will ever convince me that a mob that was out there beating police officers with flagpoles and smashing their faces with their own weapons and their own shields and yelling, "Get his gun, get his gun, get his gun," would not have killed Mitt Romney. They would have seen him as an enemy of the dear leader. They would have killed him. And if one elected member had died that day, the DC would have split into absolute chaos. The Republicans would have said, "Fuck it, we're all in."
Yeah.
And they would have gone with it. And we would be in a very different country right now. And the country I would be in is Belize. But
I'd be in Italy. But yes, no, I agree with you. And so we want to honor Officer Eugene Goodman, because to us, he's Time's Person of the Year and he's a hero. So if you guys want to send to us who you think should be the democracy's Person of the Year, send it to us, because we want to hear from you. Who do you think should be democracy's Person of the Year? Because that's a lot more relevant, because I don't know what Time is doing. And that's it for us tonight.
See y'all Thursday.
We will be back on Thursday. And on Thursday, we're going to have a special holiday edition of The Breakdown. So it's kind of like a holiday party, and you're all invited. So come and join us on Thursday. There'll be some special guests. You'll get to see some Lincoln Project folks. We'll be in all of our holiday cheer. The leg lamp will still be here. It's on that side. And who knows what will happen during our holiday party, end of the year deal on Thursday. So show up for us on Thursday at 7. And don't forget, tomorrow, our sister show, we're speaking tomorrow at 7 with Lisa and Maya. Have a great night. We'll see you Thursday.
Thanks, folks. Have a great night.